Help support the show by going to the Amazon.com search bar on footballsamerica.com when doing your online shopping. There are no charges to you, just support, and it will take you right back to the Amazon website. This month, Football's America podcast listeners will get free shipping on any order over $35 when they go to footballsamerica.com/Amazon. Again, that's footballsamerica.com/Amazon.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Football is America with Ron and Kyle. I'm Ron.
And I am Kyle, and today we have the distinct pleasure of being blessed by Brian Malan, the Royal Viscount Extraordinaire of the fantastic staff writers from Baltimore Beatdown, which you might have guessed is a Baltimore Ravens blog page, part of the SB Nation community. We love it. Brian, thank you so much for coming here to discuss the team, the season, and the ride that was 2014. Thank you.
My pleasure to be on.
Okay. Since this is the first chance for a lot of the fans from your website to hear you and get to know you, let's before we talk about the team, let's talk about you, if that's all right. First thing I want to know, how long have you been a fan of the team?
Since they came here in '96, I've spent all 26 years of my life in Baltimore. Dad and grandfather grew up a Baltimore Colts fan, and it was Baltimore or nothing in my household. So when they came here in 1996, I jumped on right away. I've been a season ticket holder since then, never missed a home game in my life, and continue to love them to this day. They're a big part of my life.
I will say you kind of lucked out in a lot of ways. You got a team that came in and was relatively successful pretty quick. And, I mean, they've got 2 rings right now, so definitely doing a lot right. Next thing I'd like to know, what drove you to be a professional? I mean, you're a writer for the page. What was the motivation and the driving force for you to just take this on full time, or at least in a professional capacity?
Just the love of talking about the Ravens. And I can do it all day, every day. I do it with all my friends all the time. It's always a topic. NFL, as we all know, is a year-round business. This is 365. It's the off season is just as important as the regular season, and it's talked about just as much. And I enjoy doing it. I enjoy the constant turnover and seeing all the teams lose players, and especially when you have a guy like Ozzie who constantly just churns them on, and more and more players coming in and out of Baltimore. And when you keep winning, it's an awesome system to follow, and it's like a science, and I'm addicted to it. I can't get enough of it.
The team has had more good years than bad, I think, since you've never missed a home game, which is, I mean, kudos to you for that. That is very impressive.
Thank you.
You've got a lot of memories with the team.
Oh, yeah.
Can you share with us your strongest memory, good, bad, or otherwise?
Strongest memory is I was actually down in New Orleans for the Super Bowl, for Super Bowl 47. I spent 6 days in New Orleans, went to the game. Got to see them win from the lower level in the end zone. I was right there in that corner in the lower level where we had the goal line stand on those 4 downs, and we won it. So I was there in New Orleans to witness that and see Ray's last game and Ed Reed get a Super Bowl, and of course, Flacco shut up all the haters and hoist that Lombardi. So that's definitely my most special moment ever.
I kind of feel like I need to, for all the people who don't get that opportunity, to tell you to go right to hell for getting such a top shelf kind of strongest memory, man. That is fantastic. Now, how much fantastic Super Bowl victory? How much of that weekend do you remember after that? Because I imagine you were partying pretty hard immediately after.
Yeah. I mean, we got down to New Orleans on a Wednesday before the Super Bowl, and we were staying not too far away from the city. Drove in there every day, and I think for the first 2.5 days that we were there, I don't think I went to sleep. I was just walking around Bourbon Street, walking around the city. And, I remember it all. When you just eat po' boys and gumbo the entire time, it kind of soaks everything up. And I'll never forget that game, and it was quite surreal. It was quite surreal. It was, the greatest experience of my life, the most expensive experience of my life, but well worth it.
I can't even imagine the fact that you got to go to a Super Bowl. Not only that, but it happened to be Ray Lewis's last Super Bowl, last game, everything. I mean, he's one of my favorite players of all time. I have a lot of favorite players of all time, but he's definitely in the top 10. And to see his last game, even though he had been kind of slipping in age, but I couldn't imagine just watching that. And not only that, but seeing the looks on the other team's face when you beat them too. That had to have been great as well. Oh
yeah. I mean, no one could deny that Ray was losing. I mean, he was losing his speed. He couldn't cover anymore. He was running on fumes at that point, but his will and determination in that playoff run, to come back from that injury after missing, I think it was about the last 10 games of the regular season, and to come in there and he, provided that last little spark that we needed. We were a team that was hurting also that year. We lost a lot of good players. Webb was down for the year. Suggs was battling 2 injuries. Ray was fighting. We had, who fires their offensive coordinator in week 13, and you expect them to win the Super Bowl, 2 months later. So to see him go out on top, especially as a Ravens fan, he's a hero here. He'll always be beloved in Ravens fans' hearts. And to see him go out on top the way he did, it's a storybook ending for sure.
Well, and it wasn't just him going out on top, but like you said, he maybe didn't have the same burst or performance, but it was measurable that the defense as a whole played way, way better with him on the field, just as a leader and as a motivator. I mean, that is a mark of greatness when you make the players around you noticeably better. And I mean, the emotional unity of a team saying, hey, we've got to go out and win this one for our captain definitely has to play a part. And another thing, not just firing your offensive coordinator, but the guy you put in place had never been an offensive coordinator before that moment. So that's extra impressive on top of that.
Oh, yeah, a lot of people for probably about the last 2 years that Cam Cameron was here, people were calling for his head to get out of Baltimore. And when we went on that stretch where we lost to we lost to the Redskins, I think it was the Steelers, the Redskins, and after that Redskins game, that was when Cam Cameron was fired. And we went into that Broncos game, and everyone thought we had new life, and we ended up getting demolished that game by the Broncos. We were missing about 8 starters that game as well, and to go on and win with Jim Caldwell, he didn't really change around the system, but it was more of just the situational football, using the right plays at the right times, and it worked for us, and it helped Joe have arguably the greatest postseason by a quarterback ever, and him and Jim Caldwell led the way.
Now, let's get into a little bit more of the 2014 season. I know that Super Bowl is a big-time topic, and I, to be honest, would love to talk to you about that season because that is the magic season, but we have to go over last year instead, okay?
Do it.
All right. The Ravens, they've become kind of a regular in the postseason. They went 10-6 last year, pretty normal for them at this point. No real win or loss streaks, but many will argue that the schedule was easy, splitting with the Steelers, with both games being one-sided each time, sweeping the Browns, but barely, also beating the losing record Falcons, Panthers, Titans, Bucks, Saints, and Jaguars. That is not necessarily the hardest schedule, but you still lost to the Texans, the Chargers, the Colts, and the division rival Bengals twice, despite, as you said, your kind of hatred for them. Lots of pessimists throughout the year, but you head into the playoffs and you win a tough game in Pittsburgh. A game that, without the very obvious concussion of Big Ben, could have very well went the other way. Now, all of that is the football aspect. The real story for the team was the adversity that they overcame at the running back position last year. Ray Rice leaves, and everybody knows why. And you have the surprise emergence of Justin Forsett, and we're going to get to him a little bit later. But first, we want to take a look at the season, at the cards that were dealt to the team in cap purgatory at the time, coming back from a fire sale due to a high criticized contract for Joe Flacco, watching the TMZ MTV drama unfold with Ray Rice's life and the mistakes that he made. We watch the players age, the offense struggles at times, and the defense try to close the gap on many of the holes left behind by the departing veteran players and the inexperienced young players that they're gaining. Give us your thoughts. Was the year a success? Was it? If not, please help us break down those small successes, the small pieces of pie to take and savor of what was the season last year.
Anytime you make it into the playoffs, it's a success. That's the first goal always, is to get into the postseason and give yourself a chance. And Ravens did just that. They went in, they kind of squeaked in a little bit. They had to win to get in, and they did it in the fourth quarter in about the last 5 minutes against that game against Cleveland in Week 17. But anytime you're going to go in and make the playoffs, and especially win on the road in Pittsburgh, something that we've never done in the postseason before, and to beat them pretty handily and lose to the eventual Super Bowl champions. I think this was every single time that the Ravens have been knocked out of the playoffs in the Flacco and Harbaugh era, it's always been by the team that's representing the AFC in the Super Bowl. So we lost to the Super Bowl champions. We had our chances, and they picked apart our weakest link, which was our secondary last year because of injuries, and credit to them. But I'm very happy with everything they accomplished last year, everything they overcame as far as Ray Rice, as far as injuries, as far as bringing in another offensive coordinator. That was this will now be Flacco's fourth offensive coordinator in 4 years, and he just keeps on trucking, keeps on putting up wins up there for us. So we fell short. I definitely think that we were the better team in that New England game, but scoreboard said differently. And I'm ready to see how they can improve on last year, because I think they will.
And even then in the New England game, there was that initial joke, Tom Brady, why don't you learn the rule book? But when the league does come back and say, no, actually, you guys were doing illegal formations, it lends at least some validity to the argument. And I'm sure you guys have to deal with all the time people saying, well, this is what whining gets you. That's not true. We have spent the entirety of this season being hyper aware of the mistakes referees would make. And so when people start saying, hey, the refs weren't getting it done right in this game, something illegal was happening, we took notice. And for the league itself to come out and explain all this, I mean, it doesn't change the end result. The Patriots are the champions. Whether or not they earnestly got there is irrelevant. They're the champions, but it has to give you that small measure of peace of mind that there was something sketchy.
I'll never be one to say that we lost the game because of other factors such as referees or, alternating the rule book or anything like that. They beat us on the field. Do those formations kind of upset me a little bit? Yes. I don't really think anyone really expected that and knew what to think of it at the moment. And I don't think the referees allowed us to substitute in accordingly. And I think that's what the main concern was between Ravens fans and the rest of the NFL, is that we didn't get a chance to alter our personnel when they were bringing in theirs. And it kind of screwed everything up there. But again, we had our chances. We had 2 14-point leads that we couldn't put away. And if one or two trick plays, people want to say that was the reason we lost, they can. But we had our chances to put them away, and they capitalized on us just being decimated at corner, and Brady just picked us apart when it mattered most. Defense can really hold up, and Flacco did as much as he could, but we came up a little bit short, and I'll give them credit for taking every avenue and advantage that they had at their disposal to beat us, and they did. I still hate them.
Coach John Harbaugh had a lot to say about those formations, and at first it kind of came across as, I don't know, sour grapes is the best way to put it. And we didn't hear much from Ozzie Newsome, and that's not out of the ordinary. He doesn't talk a ton unless he's directly addressing an NFL league issue. Do you think that Coach John Harbaugh's reaction to the whole thing was a little strange at all?
See, Harbaugh's always been someone to speak his mind and not care what anybody thinks. And he will, when he's upset about something and he doesn't think something's fair, he'll go right ahead and say it at the podium to the mass media, everyone. So it's definitely uncharacteristic as far as all NFL coaches go. I don't have a problem with it. I know a lot of people do. That's why they call him, wine ball. And Harbaugh definitely does his fair share of criticizing, other teams and officials in a respectful manner, of course. He'll always say that we got beat by the team. It wasn't one or two factors. But I have zero problem with him wanting to increase the fairness of the game, make sure that every team has the equal opportunities and doesn't have certain advantages throughout the rule book. But I have no problem with what he did, and hopefully it betters the NFL because they went ahead and took a drastic measure and changed the rule around.
Now, we know that he doesn't really have any risk of losing his job. That's not going to happen. Ozzie Newsome obviously isn't going to fire himself as GM either, so there's not much to talk about when we go into are their job safe. But I do want to talk a little bit about the hiring of Mark Trestman.
Good.
I'm a big-time Bears fan. I spent the last 2 years crying my eyes out from what I'd been seeing in Chicago. Contrary, or regardless, I guess, of that, it's a good hire to me. I mean, he's one of the best football minds offensively out there. The offense is going to be a little bit different, but he can adapt to Gary Kubiak's kind of plan that he had there with just the little bits and pieces he brings to the table. A lot of people are going to criticize me because of how much I just dogged Mark Trestman as a head coach, and I still believe a lot of the things I said about him as a head coach. I don't believe all of those things about him as an offensive coordinator. I think Jay Cutler screwed him pretty bad. I think the team in general was horrible. I think the defense was horrible. I blame Mel Tucker a lot for his firing there in Chicago as well. I think that if he'd had a better defensive plan, their offense could have at least done something. But it was an unfortunate situation for him there, but it's a very good gain for you.
Well, a lot of people wanted, was it Adam Gase? Is that his name, from Denver at first?
Yep, the Bears got him instead.
Yep, the fiery young head coach, just came from the Peyton Manning offense and everything. A lot of people wanted him, and many weren't expecting Trestman at the moment. But to have him come in with, he has kind of like that settling feeling, and when with a quarterback like Flacco, he's a settling quarterback. He's one that's calm, cool, collective, all that good stuff. And the good thing about Trestman is that he's going to come in here and he knows that it's not going to be his offense. He had already told that to the Baltimore media, and our formula is already in place. We had the best offensive single season in franchise history last year as far as points, yards, and why would he want to come in here and teach something new to 22 new players when he can just teach himself, just one person? So he's going to come in here. Of course, he's going to have his tweaks here and there, but we're still going to be a running team. We always will be a running team. This is the Raven philosophy, and he understands that, and he's going to come in here and he's going to build on that. We have the blocking schemes in place. We have the players in the trenches in place. We have the running back in place, at least for another year or two. And it's not, our philosophy is not going to change. He's not going to come in here and you're going to see Flacco throwing it up 600 times. No, that's just not going to happen. And he's going to play Raven football, and we're excited to see what he's going to do. Hopefully he can build on last year.
Now, when we were talking about the pieces that are already in place, let's go over some of the personnel moves that Mr. Newsome made throughout the offseason. Last couple of years, he seemed to kind of be selling low to appease the Joe Flacco contract, and we're going to get to that in just a second. But first, let's get into some of his other personnel moves. There's not a lot of them, but some interesting talking points nonetheless. Let's start with, and I know that this is a position that doesn't really matter in Baltimore because Joe Flacco is unbreakable. I mean, let's be honest, he's huge, weird version of the Tin Man versus Hercules. I don't know what's going on back there. He doesn't go down. It just never happens.
Mm-hmm. Tin Man versus Hercules? What the
Tin
hell?
Man. He's a Tin Man.
Oh, okay.
There you go. So you got it? All right. Anyway.
It's called enunciating.
Well,
it's all right.
I'm sorry that your ears don't work. Not my fault. Let's talk about the backup quarterback, Matt Schaub.
All right.
He doesn't have a real great reputation in the quarterback world over the last couple of years. It's widely believed it's a confidence issue. A lot of people say that he's done. It seems like the injuries took their toll. He's just not been able to recover. Those are the things that get thrown out quite a bit. What does he bring to the table that you can seriously say this is a good signing rather than just going out and finding yourself a rookie to develop back there to be the backup?
Because right now we assume that he was signed on accident.
On accident, no. He's a veteran mind that'll come in and knows the system already. That's one of the most important pieces, is that he knows the system and the offensive scheme that we're going to be running, which is that zone blocking scheme. He was in it for so long with Kubiak, and he's going to come in here and he'll only be able to help Flacco as far as the film room and studying and all that. Everyone who doesn't really get these backup quarterback signings and doesn't say that it's good or bad or whatever it is, you're screwed either way if your starting quarterback goes down, pretty much in the NFL. If Flacco went down for 10 weeks, I wouldn't expect us to make the playoffs with God knows whoever is out there. If these guys were, any good, they wouldn't be backups in the NFL. They'd be starters. That's why Schaub is a backup now. But do I definitely trust him over our 6th-round pick from last year, Keith Wenning, to win us a game or two if, God forbid, something happened to Flacco? Yes, I do. I think Schaub could definitely do that, especially on a extremely talented team like Baltimore and not the Oakland Raiders. I think he could come in here and throw the ball 17, 21 times, hand it off to Forsett, and let our defense win the game for, a week or two stretch if we had to.
Now, if Joe Flacco does go down, and you just said as long as he comes in and only has to throw a couple, maybe 21 times, okay, and you have Justin Forsett, another big off-season move there was to lock him up. Let's talk a little bit about him. Huge surprise for him coming in and kind of filling that role that Ray Rice left behind. I always felt he was rather undervalued, never really got his opportunity. He almost faced fading into obscurity. Then he came to Baltimore and rescued a backfield. Not only that, but I actually had a chance to meet him when he played for the Seahawks at a football game when I was in the Army. We got to meet with some of the players and stuff, and he stood around for about 45 minutes talking to military members. So a really cool guy, truly humbled to be a player in the NFL, and I have to imagine he's a great teammate as well. Mm-hmm. Can you give us kind of your thoughts on how his role is going to evolve on the team? It can't keep being the workhorse number one back. He's got to start doing some committee. You've got to start working rookies in. What is his upcoming role in the team with the team?
First of all, he's going to be a great veteran presence, a great locker room guy, as you said. He's a great family man, great in the community, very religious and hard worker. So, it's always an inspiring factor to have on your team. We didn't really work him that hard last year. He put up big yards, but it's because he was averaging over 5 yards per carry. And we definitely gave the ball to our rookie Lorenzo Taliaferro a good bit and Bernard Pierce. And it's definitely going to be another committee approach this year. I do see Forsett definitely having at least 200, maybe 210 carries throughout the season. And second-year player Lorenzo Taliaferro probably spilling him for another maybe 80 or 90 this year, and whatever rookie we bring in or another veteran we bring in. I know that Harbaugh already said that we need to add a running back, and we're going to add a running back after losing Pierce. But to see him come in here last year, basically with many people didn't think he had a shot. A lot of people were talking about cutting him, especially because we thought Ray Rice was coming back. But we knew what kind of offensive line we had. We knew that he was familiar with Kubiak's system. We knew that he didn't have a lot of tread on the tires, as wear and tear. I think he only had less than 500 career carries. And what did DeMarco Murray have last year? Like almost to that number in one season. So he was maybe a 29-year-old running back, but he had the legs of a 25-year-old. And see him come in there and put up those numbers, and he really, carried us in some situations. I think back to that New Orleans Saints game last year on Monday Night Football, and he just ran all over them, and that was such a huge win for us. That really catapulted us to go on our run towards the playoffs. And I expect him to come in here and be another 1,000-yard, 100, maybe about a 1,100 to 1,200 yard back. I wouldn't expect him to put up anywhere more than that, but it's only because we're going to keep him on a carry limit just so, he's fresh, hopefully when we make another run in January.
And you just brought up Bernard Pierce about how, he was not going to be on the team, and then they kind of had to when Rice left. And he gets a DUI, and about 4 hours after the announcement of him getting the DUI, the Ravens did not waste time announcing that they had released him. Like, I don't think he had posted bail yet or something before they'd even announced that they had released Bernard Pierce. Now, you've already kind of touched on my only question, which was, what does his absence leave behind? But I mean, I guess we really don't need to talk about that now. So I guess me mentioning it is pointless, but
we can ask the one thing. The only kind of relevant point when bringing up Bernard Pierce is, do you think that without the whole Ray Rice rigmarole, there would have been this strict of discipline, or is the team just not willing to have any player drag the organization's good name through the mud?
I do think if the Ray Rice situation didn't happen, Pierce might still be on the team. I'm not saying he would, but I don't think that Ozzie and especially Steve Bisciotti are willing to keep letting players drag, like you said, their name through the mud. And if, of course, every player isn't going to be treated exactly the same. If Elvis Dumerville got in the same situation, I doubt that they're going to be cutting him for that. But because of his Pierce, who was looking like our third-string running back heading into this year and didn't have that great of a year, fought injuries again, you screw up without making a name for yourself in this league, they have no problem replacing you. There's, especially running back, which is such an easy position to really be successful at in the NFL. So I'm not surprised by it at all. He kind of knew that he was getting cut. Didn't he say to the police, "Don't you know what happens? I'm getting cut tomorrow." So it doesn't surprise me that much. So we'll see where Ozzie takes it as far as the draft or free agency from here.
Now, also, to wrap up kind of the personnel moves, the last player that we have to talk about is Haloti Ngata. Traded to the Lions, you get a 4th and a 5th round pick for him, and you also have to send a 7th with him. He seemed to be the Ravens' household name, to be honest, on the defensive line. And I had a friend who I watched actually break down in tears because of this. She was devastated. What was the motivation here? Was it the PED use? Was it the age? Was it something else? It doesn't seem like the Ravens really had, a plan on this, and it kind of seems like they got fleeced in the deal.
I don't think so at all. It was the cap number. He had a $16 million cap hit, and we needed to free up some of that space. And it was either cut him and free up $8.5 million, or try to find a team that would trade with us and free up $8.5 million.
And was he completely unwilling to restructure, considering he had spent almost the better part of a decade with the Ravens?
We went ahead and tried to work out a contract extension with him immediately once the offseason started, and it dragged on up until that point, and he wasn't going to budge. Even though he already made a good bit of money, he had a number set in his mind that he thought that he was valued at, and he was sticking with that and didn't think that we gave him a fair price. So we started looking for suitors, and you asked a lot of Ravens fans around here, if we would have cut Haloti Ngata and freed up $8.5 million for a 31-year-old defensive tackle who probably has maybe about 2 good years left in him, they would have been all right with that. But to get a 4th and 5th round pick out of it and free up that cap space, we're not happy to see him go, but we understand the business side of this and understand that Ozzie has always been the type of GM that is more willing to let a player leave early than to keep a player a year late, because that's how you ruin your salary cap. And that's what Ozzy's always done. And we got something back in return and still freed up some cap space. Right now, we wouldn't have any salary cap if we still had a loading out on the team. But because we got rid of him, we have about just a little bit under $8 million in room. So we'll see where he takes the picks. It's going to be tough to replace a legend in Baltimore. He spent 9 years here, and he was an anchor on our defense. But with guys like Brandon Williams and Timmy Jernigan and a lot of young talent on that defensive line, we're definitely excited. And I don't think we'll miss too much of a beat without him.
Now, when we talk about the cap and that being a motivating factor in removing a cornerstone of the franchise, my attention just has to be drawn back to Joe Flacco. And I get from the way you're talking about him that you're a huge, big-time Joe Flacco fan. And, I mean, he is a Super Bowl winning quarterback. He's a Super Bowl MVP.
Mm-hmm.
But as you also said, this team has an identity. It is a run-first team and a defensive juggernaut. And where I get confused is Joe Flacco is getting essentially top 5 quarterback money when he's not even asked to be a top 5 level quarterback. And there seems to be a very realistic disconnect there. And I understand the mechanics of the league in that you win a Super Bowl and you're in a contract year, you get paid. But is there anybody, any sensibility through the fans, through the media, through anything you're getting that this deal is going to have to be restructured maybe sooner rather than later because there's starting to become a divide? You know, as of right now, the big issue I'm seeing, there's not enough wide receiver talent for him to even throw to. So you're paying all this money for a quarterback and you don't have the tools to let him be as effective as he can be.
Well, one of the biggest mistakes a lot of the outsiders will make these days is that they think that Flacco's contract is ruining the team, when in retrospect, last year he had the 12th highest cap hit of quarterbacks in the NFL, and actually this year he has the 15th highest cap hit of quarterbacks in the NFL. So there's 14 other quarterbacks right now that are hurting their team more than Flacco's hurting his, as a lot of people think he is. So first of all, his contract is not ruining this team whatsoever. It's a blessing to have a quarterback like Flacco here in Baltimore after everything we've been through. Now, where it gets interesting is after this year, where his cap hit goes from I think we're at about $14 million this year, jumps up to about 28.6 or 28.5 next year in 2016, and that is when it will be reworked. I think they'll most likely add another 3 or 4 year extension onto that contract. And that was agreed upon when he signed that $120 million deal. We knew that this was essentially a 3-year deal. And when that time comes, we will approach that. But even next year, with Flacco's contract hitting that number, we're still going to be in a great situation. I would say we'll probably be, even with his contract, probably be somewhere around $20 million under the cap going into next season. And of course, we'll have to re-sign a few players, but that will get worked out. That $28 million cap hit will be brought down to probably somewhere between 18 and 21, which is respectable for the franchise quarterback market these days when you see guys like your boy Cutler out there.
Yeah, he's so awesome. I cannot wait to watch him play, and he's worth every penny. That's how I really feel. It's going to be so great, you guys. This is going to be so awesome. Just you wait. You don't even know what's coming.
But I couldn't be happier with Joe. He's a hero in Baltimore. He's the reason we are where we are. It's not just coincidence that from 1996 to 2007, we made the playoffs a grand total of 4 times in that, 10-year span almost, 11-year span. And he comes in here, and since 2008, we missed it once. So I don't think that's just a coincidence. He's the real deal. I could care less about what numbers he puts up. Sorry that he doesn't help your team win fantasy football championships. He just brings Baltimore real championships and Super Bowl championships. So we couldn't be happier with him winning along the way for us.
Now, before we get into all the draft talks, I mean, we have a limited understanding of the personnel and what's going on. And as you said, when you look at things from the outside in, you often get the perspective that's given to you by the media at large. At this moment, can you give us maybe a little bit of insider perspective? Is there any kind of personnel moves or goings on that we've missed that we should have gone over? Anything that you think that, you know, Ravens fans should know, but is maybe not getting the attention it deserves?
I think right now is contract extensions. As far as the players that we have on the team already, I would point to Marshall Yanda. He's probably the second greatest offensive lineman the Ravens have ever had, behind Jonathan Ogden. He's in the last year of his deal. They're most likely going to get something worked out with him where he retires a Raven. He's one of those players that you don't let leave to go play somewhere else. And other players, Jimmy Smith and the corner, we want to definitely try to get him locked up before next year. As you can see, these corners are getting ridiculous amounts of money. What was it, $63 million for Byron Maxwell? You know, a third string corner pretty much on another team getting that much money. I can only imagine what some other team with $30-40 million in cap space would throw at Jimmy Smith. And they'll want to get Justin Tucker sealed up as well, who's arguably the best kicker in the league right now. And they'll try to get something worked out with those three players, hopefully before the season starts. I doubt all three will get that, but those are three deals that not a lot of people probably know about, even within Baltimore, definitely not outside of Baltimore. We like to keep our own, so that's what we'll focus on right now. And as far as other free agent signings go, we can never tell with Ozzie. He likes to sign players that are cut. I'm sure that sometime in July or August, we'll be signing a few more players that were let go right before the season starts. So we'll rediscuss that topic, late in the summer, probably when we inch closer to preseason.
Now, let's get into the draft stuff. There's a lot to talk about here. The Ravens, like you said, like to keep their own, and you do that by building through the draft. A lot of big needs that they have. One of the more glaring ones is wide receiver. You have Torrey Smith, he's gone. Jacoby Jones, he is gone. He wasn't a huge part of the passing game, but still. And then Steve Smith. He's still good, but at this point, he's prepping his 401k. So how do you see them approaching the draft in terms of needing to fill a wide receiver need? It looks like they kind of are going to be going after a possession guy, a big guy that can go up and get the football to complement Steve Smith as he ends his career.
It's really hard to predict where Ozzie's going to go as far as drafting a wide receiver. It's probably his weakest position drafting that he has. We've never really been able to hit on like a franchise guy ever in the history of the Ravens. Our best pick at wide receiver has probably been Torrey Smith in franchise history. He's probably been the only guy that we actually brought in from the start and was able to breed into a type of playmaker that our offense needed. So it's really tough to predict if Ozzie is going to, focus in on some of these wide receivers. It's definitely a talented class, but I wouldn't be surprised if Ozzie took a wide receiver in the first or second round. I wouldn't be surprised if he waited until the fourth and fifth round to take him. He is going to stay true to his board. It's best player available in Baltimore. And if a wide receiver is not the best player available at pick 26 in the first round or in our second round pick, he's not going to go after it just to fill a need. So it really kind of just goes how the board goes. I will say we are 99.9% going to take a wide receiver at some point, and I do expect it to be early. I do expect one of these guys to be available, such as a Jalen Strong from Arizona State at 26, Rashad Perryman from UCF, maybe Dorial Green-Beckham if his character clears what Ozzie and the Ravens are looking for, Evan Smith from Ohio State. I wouldn't be surprised to see any of these guys taken in the first or second round by the Ravens.
Now, we're talking the deep class that is the wide receivers. There's a lot of picks they could make there. Another class that there's a lot of depth at is the running back position. Now, as much as I love and dream of fun vacations in a convertible down the 101 with Justin Forsett, because I really do like him as a running back, he is honestly just kind of a stopgap at this point. He's turning 30. He's a great player, but the need for a young scat back in the what will become the Trestman offense is there. Forsett can hold it down in a committee role this next year, probably more than a committee role. He's going to be pretty much the feature guy, but the rookie last year, Lorenzo, and I always have trouble saying this, is it Taliaferro?
Yeah, Taliaferro.
He's not exactly suited for the Trestman offense. We kind of expect Ozzie to take a running back or two maybe even and see what kind of sticks here. How do you kind of see that playing out?
I do see them taking a running back at some point in the draft. I'm not sure if it's going to be a priority as far as like wide receiver or cornerback or even D-line or tight end will be, simply because we see running backs from all different talent levels and all points of the draft come in and succeed. And it's not really a position that you really need to go in and prioritize at the top of the draft. Now, that isn't to say that they wouldn't go after a player like Todd Gurley or Melvin Gordon. I definitely think that they do like Melvin Gordon. Our current running back coach was the running backs coach at Wisconsin when Melvin Gordon was there. So I'm sure he has just as much insight as anyone in the NFL right now. And he could definitely be a player that would be around for 6-7 years, could sit behind Forsett for a year or two, and definitely, as we know, contribute. But I would not be surprised to see them, again, like wide receivers, see them approach running back in the first 3 rounds, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them touch it in the 5th or 6th round. Like you said, Taliaferro, he's probably not going to be a starter in Baltimore, but he's a great change of pace back because he's that power back that we can throw in there in the goal line, grind out those tough 3-4 yard gains when we need a first down. I wouldn't be surprised to see them take a player like Amir Abdullah from Nebraska, Kevin Coleman from Indiana. We all know Ozzie's ties to Alabama, so I wouldn't be surprised to see T.J. Yeldon there as well. I would fully expect them to touch running back at some point in the first 5 rounds.
Now, you briefly touched on tight end. Dennis Pitta is seemingly still in recovery. The need for tight end is going to be big, especially given the frequency that Mark Trestman leans on that position. Now, the draft looks like there might be some of the later rounds that fit the scheme, but there's definitely the concern over the depth of talent in the draft. You do have the projected number 1 tight end, Max Williams from Minnesota. He looks to be a late first round guy and could very well be available, but there are character concerns. Now, do you think that that is the sort of risk Ozzie is willing to take? Would he bypass that? Do you think that he's even willing to just kind of see where the value comes into him this year? I mean, I don't think that that's a position to necessarily take a flyer on.
That's another position. I think, like you said, I think Ozzie's going to let the talent come to him in the draft. If Max Williams or the guy from Miami, Clive Walford, are available there in the 2nd round or 3rd round, I wouldn't be surprised to see Ozzie take them. Right now, yes, Dennis Pitta's not only the season is up in the air, his entire career is up in the air right now. We have absolutely no idea what we will get from Pitta next year or in the future. And right now, the only tight end that we really have on the roster is Crockett Gilmore, who was our 3rd round pick last year. And he's seen more as a blocker than he is a pass catcher. That isn't to say that he couldn't come in here and catch 30, 40 balls for us. But in a run-heavy offense like we use, and especially with Trestman, his success with Martellus Bennett over the last few years, it's going to be a priority to upgrade that position. Steve Bisciotti, in a conference call with season ticket holders a week or 2 ago, he said that he can live without taking a wide receiver in this draft, early, and he doesn't feel that it's a dire need to go after a wide receiver. But he said it is a dire need to go after a tight end. We need to address that, and you're going to see 2 new names in here most likely over the next 6 to 10 weeks. I wouldn't be surprised if it was Max Williams. I have heard the stories recently about his cockiness that people have been saying, but if he's there in the second round, I'd be more than happy to bring him in there. I love Nick O'Leary from Florida State, old school tight end. He's actually the grandson of famous golfer Jack Nicklaus, which is pretty cool. And that's probably another position that they'll touch. I would probably say sometime in the third day between rounds 4 and 7.
Now, with all the needs on offense, there's also a couple of needs on defense, but the one that glares the most, and for some reason this continues to be a point of contention for the Ravens, is cornerback. You have Webb there, but he needs some help on the other side. What is the best play here for them to really start nailing down that position?
Well, to kind of correct you, we have Jimmy Smith, he's the go-to guy here. He's that man, when he's on top of his game, he's a top 5 corner in this league, and he was playing like it last year until he had a injury late in the season. So if we can get him and Webb back fully healthy, our starters are as good as a lot of groups in the NFL. Those 2 are 2 premier quarters in the NFL, but health has definitely not been in their favor over the last 3 years. I mean, we put 5 cornerbacks on injured reserve last year at the end of the year. That's how many we were running through. And we don't have a lot of depth behind Webb and Jimmy Smith right now. So I honestly think that corner is probably the most likely position that we would draft in the first round when you have guys like Kevin Johnson, Byron Jones, Marcus Peters, who's the guy from LSU, Collins. I wouldn't be surprised to see any of those guys taken at 26. You can never have enough good corners in this league. And when we have as special of a pass rush as we do with Suggs and Doomerville, I definitely think that just to add more firepower to that secondary could only help. That was the biggest component for us losing that game in New England. And I don't think Ozzy's going to mess around and let his roster be thin at cornerback again last year like it was.
Looking ahead at next year, it's a little bit tougher schedule than last year. You've got the NFC West to contend with, and that is definitely a difficult division to play. Obviously, the AFC North that the Ravens are a part of, always just crazy, beautiful, bloody games. Just a joy to watch. How do you think that this next year is going to play out? I mean, I'm asking both in terms of, playing these teams, the NFC West, the AFC West, the, AFC North, all this difficult schedule. Who's going to give the Ravens the most difficulty? And I mean, how much hope is there for next year?
Anytime you have Ozzie Newsome, Joe Flacco, and Harbaugh on your team, you have a shot at getting to play some football in January. And I will expect them to be playing football in January yet again this year. Now, this schedule is one of the hardest that I've seen in recent years as far as playing teams like Seattle and San Francisco and Denver and San Diego, Kansas City. I mean, those are some tough teams. And then you already have, the AFC North sending 3 teams to the playoffs last year. So that's 2 more playoff teams that we have to play 4 times next year. I expect hopefully another 11-win, 10-win season out of Baltimore. Barring injury, there's no reason that they can't win the division. There's no reason they can't go 12-4. They have a championship pedigree. They're going to chase it. This roster is not complete yet, and it won't be complete until August. Ozzie's only going to load up with more firepower between now and the end of preseason as far as the draft and free agency. So I think they have every opportunity in the world to take the division and get 11-5 or 12-4 team. It's going to be exciting to see some of those games against Seattle and San Francisco and Denver. Those are 3 tough games. And they're really going to test everything that we have, but we can keep up with the best as the world has seen so far.
Now, we as Kyle said, we're going to be pushing up against the clock here, so we're going to have to start kind of poking everybody with the stick here, including myself. Let's turn it over to you. What I want you to do is be able to plug the show, or plug your site, plug your Twitter, plug your handler, and this is your time. Cover anything we didn't cover. Tell Kyle or I how dumb we are for even bringing you on and wasting your time. Whatever it is that you'd like to talk about. You have a few minutes here. Open up the floor for you. Go ahead.
Well, I am a going on 7-year blogger now with Baltimore Beatdown of SB Nation. I joined up with the site in 2008, and it's one of the best Ravens blogs out there. Anybody can join up, make a handle, start writing up some fan posts, fan shots, any news. There's a lot of great discussion on the website. A lot of knowledgeable fans. There's a ton of regulars that you'll see that if you go on there and follow it, day to day, you'll see the same people on there every day. A lot of great football minds, a lot of really cool dudes that really know their stuff. There's a lot of really good head writers as far as Jason Butt, Matthew Stevens, a lot of guys that we have brought on over the last year and a half or so after we took new leadership with the blog. And they're putting out great stuff. They have a lot of great insight, a lot of people that have some inside sources as far as connections with the Baltimore Sun and a lot of other Baltimore media outlets. So I would encourage anyone to go on there, BaltimoreBeatdown.com, make an account, and you can really talk about anything you like. We're not ones to shy away from any conversation about the Ravens. And anyone that wants to follow us on Twitter, you can find our Twitter handle at Baltimore Beatdown. You can find me at Mailer, Malor, and anybody that needs any more information regarding the Ravens, feel free to reach me out on Twitter. Now, as far as I know you wanted me to touch on a few players that some people wouldn't expect to hear their names called. I would
Please, yeah, that would be great.
I would probably point to 3 of them right now. The first would be Ricky Wagner, who is the right tackle for Baltimore. I know that earlier when we were discussing what we wanted to go over, you had brought up Michael Orr and possibly offensive line being a need because of that Orr departure. Well, Wagner was a 5th-round pick out of Wisconsin in 2013 and didn't really see much time his rookie year, but he came in last year after we lost Orr, and I know a lot of people go by the Pro Football Focuses these days, but he graded out for them as their 2nd best right tackle in the league, and he was phenomenal next to Yanda. So he's definitely a name to watch out for this year as being one of the top young tackles in the league. And if him and Yanda can continue where they left off, it would be a blessing for Forsett in that running game, because they can grade some road out there. Those are 2 big boys that really know how to get after it. As far as defense goes, the first thing I'll point to is Brandon Williams, nose tackle. He was rather unknown coming into the 2013 draft, along with Wagner, out of the tiny Division II school of Southern Missouri. But this man probably is competing for the biggest arms in the NFL. He's a Casey Hampton-like nose tackle, really immovable. And he was phenomenal for us last year, especially with Nada missing some time. He came in here and he was just a rock in the middle. I would be expecting to hear his name a lot more this year as one of the better players at his position. So watch out for Big 98, Brandon Williams. And the last player I'll point to is safety Will Hill. A lot of people probably know about him from his screw-ups with the Giants that he had over the last few years. But he is as talented of a safety as you're going to find in the NFL. Closing speed, can cover, can hit. we brought him on last year, and he missed the first 6 games of the year because of, I think it was a 3rd suspension in only 2 seasons. But when he came in here in week 7, he hit the ground running, and he really saved what was already a depleting secondary and really turned us around. And we signed him to a restricted tender this year, so he's going to be back with us for another year. So I would expect big things from him, especially paired with Kendrick Lewis, another really good pickup for a decent price. So watch out for that tandem this year for sure.
All right. Hey, thank you so much for coming on, Brian. And I'm sorry that we're kind of capping and kind of rushing out the door here, but we have gone a little bit over time, and I'm gonna have to cut a little bit back, trim the fat, as it were. But luckily we have that break, so it won't be too bad. And
yeah, not a problem. That's what happens when you start talking football, right?
Yeah, that's right. And we really appreciate coming on and talking Ravens with us today. And if you can, hopefully we'll be in contact, and you can kind of do something for us for the draft, do a little write-up for us for the draft after it happens, kind of give us your opinions on that kind of stuff. And we'll definitely include that in our draft review show if we could.
Of course, I'll get you guys up on the site. When I get the link to everything as far as the podcast, and I'll definitely shoot you guys some credit and get your names out there on our site, and hopefully we can get some people to come over here and listen to the fun podcast that we had to do tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and kind of stick with us here right at the end, and we'll kind of wrap you up at the end,
right.
Okay?
Got it.
All right.
Once again, that was Brian Malan, writer for Baltimore Beatdown of SB Nation. Definitely a lot of information out of this guy. Yeah,
I was excited to bring him on. I think the weight that he had to have, and some of that's our fault because we were late kind of getting to the interview due to technical stuff, and we had to wait. You are moving into a new house, and unfortunately we weren't quite prepped for that. That's our fault, but that's just how it goes sometimes. And I think he got a little tired on us towards the end. I think we're all a little tired. It's late.
I'm not tired. It's not late.
Well, not for you, but it is for me.
Well, that's your problem, not mine.
That is true.
Why don't you just go ahead and strive to be excellent all the time, like I do?
I am excellent, even in my sleep.
Yeah, but you're not striving for it. It's just happening incidentally. You got to work for it. You just can't have excellence thrust upon you by God and his infinite mercy. You got to work for it, all right?
I sold my soul twice in 2 failed marriages to get the excellence that I have.
Well, that's why, because your soul's credit rating is through the damn toilet. That's what's happening. Here I am, pure as the driven snow. Which actually, that one doesn't make any sense, because if the snow is driven, didn't like somebody run a snowplow over it? Because that means that snow is dirty. As dirty as I felt when I gave him a roll of my R's and he didn't even mention it.
Oh, is that sad face time for...
Look, I roll my R's and you don't say anything. Now I feel like a 16th century dock working prostitute, okay? That is not okay.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
So, hey, Baltimore Beatdown people, why don't you come on over to Football is America podcast for more of this, but actually also football, not just me calling myself a prostitute. I mean, there's that too, but...
Often. That actually happens more than you think.
Yeah, and we hate on Tom Brady a lot, and I think the worst you're going to hear us talk about Joe Flacco is how much he loves McDonald's and not being entertaining.
Yeah, he's a pretty boring guy.
Well, he admits it, though.
Yes.
Even, like, when your dad says he's boring as hell, and he's like, yeah, that sounds about right, it's like, well, Jesus, dude, you leave us nowhere to go.
Yeah, thanks for taking away all the fun that we were going to have at your expense.
You know what, though? I would love Joe Flacco all over again if he'd grow back that pedophile mustache.
Oh, man. So awesome.
I mean, like, I think he needs to get that pedophile mustache again and then win the Super Bowl again and be the MVP, only this time they give him a windowless van.
I want to see him win the Super Bowl and then use the Lombardi Trophy as a mirror to shave his mustache off and then hand the whiskers to the losing team.
That would also be excellent. Okay, so now, Baltimore people, you got to come on board because now I am slightly entertained at the idea of your team winning. You can find us on iTunes, on Pocket Cast, on Stitcher. Search for Football is America. You can get on there, take a listen to our show, regret that decision, and then write a scathing review.
Also, you can get us on our website, footballisamerica.com. All the shows are there. You can go back to the very beginning now. check us out. You can share everything right to your Facebook, to your Twitter, to your Google Plus, to Reddit, wherever it is that you want to share it to. There's pretty much a sharing option for every single medium out there, social media that you could think of. You can get us on Facebook at facebook.com.
Wait, do we do the Pinterest?
We do the Pinterest.
Do?
Yes, we do.
Isn't that a thing that you have to have ovaries for?
That is why my wife runs it.
Nice. I like how my gender stereotyping proves true. Like, I feel bad, but then I feel good because I'm right.
You can get us on Facebook, facebook.com/footballisamerica podcast. Get us on Twitter at FBIA podcast. You can also email us, ron@footballisamerica.com, or Kyle, that's Keil, because he spells his name weird, at footballisamerica.com.
Well, I have German parents. What do you want?
I don't know, a Y, an L, and an E?
No.
All right. Well, thank you, folks, for joining us. We really appreciate you tuning in, or streaming in, as some would say. Take care, and we hope to have you back.
Thank you so much.